We all like to think that we know what's going to happen on Thursday night, day one of the NFL draft. But if the Washington Commanders go off script a little bit, I got 4 names that might be called instead of some of the ones that we're expecting. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I'm your host, David Harrison, here with you Monday through Friday. Also your friend, your eyes, your ears on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders, doing so for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. Also helping out with WUSA 9, your local CBS affiliate's local coverage of the team as well. I want to thank you for coming through today for this episode. It is mailbag time. We're going to put a pause on our prospect big board series. We will continue that in the next episode, but we are going to maintain our mailbag Wednesday. So I want to thank you for coming through for that. We're going to be answering questions on the rookie wage scale, perhaps another trade with the Philadelphia Eagles, asking about Dominique Hampton's future with the Washington Commanders. But we're going to start it all off with some potential surprise candidates to be the 29th overall pick by the Washington Commanders in this year's NFL draft. Every day, those of you who come through every single day. A special thank you to you for continuing to do so. Everybody out there, if you're not already, please take a moment to subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. And if you're new to Locked On Commanders, this is a daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I hope you like what you hear and see, and you come back and see us again or listen to us again very, very soon. Mailbag, very simple. Insiders get to ask questions. I'm going to pull up some of these questions. Again, we never really exhaust the mailbag, although I'm going to do my best to do so before the NFL draft actually begins, because all these questions pretty much pertain to the NFL draft. We're going to kick it off now with Cam, who asks, what's the first non-position of need the Commanders might have fall in their lap in the NFL draft? So asking very simply, obviously, there's a lot of positions in need that people think about, and there's players that are probably your favorite in those position groups that if they're there at number 29, you're going to want the Commanders to take those players. Well, if by either those players being gone or a player of a position of lesser need is available that the Commanders, Adam Peters specifically, just thinks is that much better than all the other available guys, or maybe there's a deeper class here in this position, whatever reasoning Adam Peters might have for pulling the trigger on a guy who's not in a position, quote unquote, of need, who could some of those guys be? So Cam says that he wants to exclude edge, wide receiver, running back, and DB. Those are the 4 areas of need identified by Cam that were basically taken off the board. So if there are a prospect of 29 that doesn't fit a position of need, the Commanders could still draft. And obviously, I would say the Commanders could draft anybody at number 29 who hasn't already been drafted, right? There's 28 guys the Commanders can't draft at number 29. Everybody else is on the board. Obviously, the deeper you get down, like the big board and rankings and all that stuff, the less likely a player is going to get. But there are some good players at the bottom of the first round that could potentially or will potentially be available that Adam Peters could find very intriguing, very interesting, and target for his team. So I've got 4 names here for you that we're going to talk about. The first 2 are both offensive tackles. Okay, we're going to start with offensive tackle Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, who is projected to go ahead of 29 by most mock drafts. Overall, I think his range is around 25 or something like that. Now, again, a lot of these guys, as is every draft season, their spots in mock drafts are going to kind of fluctuate here and there. But Josh Simmons, 6'5", offensive tackle, 317 pounds. Again, coming out of Ohio State, most recent national champions, athletic, quick, type of guy. He's got experience on the left side and the right side of the offensive line. Really good feet, which I think is important for an NFL prospect, where you get a little bit less development, right? We've kind of seen it. I mean, we've had conversations and people have had several conversations about the NFL's lack of development, especially on the offensive line. So if you see an offensive lineman with good feet, experience, the athleticism that you covet, which the Washington Commanders certainly do covet athleticism in their offensive linemen, it could be intriguing. He's got room to grow as well. He's already a good prospect, but he's got room to grow. Did get injured last year, so the medicals are going to be a big part of Josh Simmons' evaluation for these teams. I don't have his medical records. I can't tell you what those are, but he is definitely a guy that if he's there at 29, depending on which edges are available, which receivers, which running backs, which DBs, right? It's all contextual. Context matters and everything. But is there a scenario where Josh Simmons becomes the pick over even a guy like, Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State is a guy that a lot of people have a lot of affection for. He's kind of considered an early day 2 guy. I've seen some people mock him to the Commanders. Is there a world where the Commanders don't go after Emeka Egbuka and instead they go after, say, Josh Simmons or Josh Conerly Jr. out of Oregon, who we're going to talk about next? Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a possibility, right? Optionality is Adam Peters' goal. And I use that word specifically because it's the word he uses, but, flexibility, whatever you want to call it, every GM, that's what they enter the offseason trying to do. How can I make my roster as filled out as possible to give me any avenue I want to take it at my pick? And what I love about this offseason is as friendly as some Commanders fans can be about these mock draft situations, if I mock draft an edge rusher in the first round, I get somebody who says, I can't believe you passed on that receiver or that DB or whatever. If I draft a running back, it's the same. I can't believe you passed on that edge. If it's a DB, I can't believe you passed on that receiver. And it just shows you the optionality that Adam Peters really has. There is no one spot that he has to go, even though some people will say that they think he has to go one specific spot. That's actually not the reality of the situation. So you could go anywhere. Now, Josh Conerly, another 6'5" dude, 311 pounds, so a little bit lighter than Josh Simmons. Good mover to the second level. Again, something that the Commanders really like out of their offensive lineman. He's a smooth type of player. He's also got room to grow. I think he's certainly behind Simmons. I think earlier in the process, a lot of people actually had Conerly above Simmons, but I think Simmons is certainly above Conerly in the evaluation criteria. Again, eye of the beholder type of situation, but there's 2 tackles there. And then with Brandon Coleman, you kind of look at his future and you say, okay, look, maybe he shifts back inside. I know a lot of people think he might be better inside. There were evaluators last year when he was coming out of TCU who had him inside in the NFL. The Commanders obviously put him outside. I think he did all right for a 3rd-round rookie. But, perhaps his future is inside. You bring in Conerly or you bring in Simmons to compete with Andrew Wiley, and Brandon Coleman goes to compete with Nick Allegretti, or maybe he fills in for Sam Cosmi, while he's getting better. Who knows what the plan would be at that point. But again, optionality, you want to get your best 5 offensive linemen on the field, right? Next name we're going to drop, defensive lineman Derrick Harmon out of Oregon, 6'4.5", 313 pounds. He can move up and down the line. He can play odd. He can play even. Wide-bodied dude, right? And you kind of look back to last year. What were the Washington Commanders really missing on their defensive line? They were missing a wide-bodied dude who just kind of hold the point of attack, eat gaps, eat blocks. That is what Derrick Harmon does. He's a tough dude, immovable object kind of comes to mind. If you're a DMV football fan for a while now, even though you might not be a Ravens fan, obviously, you probably remember Haloti Ngata. And Haloti Ngata never eclipsed 5.5 sacks in a single season, but he was a big part of that Baltimore Ravens defense. Now, Haloti Ngata was bigger than Derrick Harmon is, but kind of a similar style type of player. I remember Ray Lewis, telling the Baltimore Ravens, hey, I need a guy in front of me to eat blocks and fill and, take up lanes to help me get free. Haloti Ngata did that for him for a few solid years. So Derrick Harmon, another guy, and look, Johnny Newton's there, Javon Kinlaw's there, Daron Payne is there. There's a lot of guys there. Is there a certain star that we're going to get into that kind of conversation here in just a little bit too? Obviously, I think that Derrick Harmon could be a guy that might potentially come in. Speaking of lines, we're going to stay right there in the trenches because, again, when you have your kind of obvious needs or biggest needs on a roster, where could a team look to skew away from those needs and get a position player elsewhere? The trenches, right? The trenches where you always need to be great. Interior offensive lineman Tyler Booker out of Alabama. And it's really interesting because I remember bringing up Tyler Booker in a earlier episode this offseason, and I had a few people tell me, bro, why are you even talking about him? He's a top 10 guy, definitely not getting out of the top 15. Now, Tyler Booker, I mean, he's got day 2 projections from some people. It's all over the map. I mean, I've seen recent mock drafts where he's gone 12th overall. I've seen recent mock drafts where he's not in the first round. Like it's everywhere. But Tyler Booker, 6'5", 321 pounds, team captain in Alabama, solid run blocker, good pass pro technique and IQ. Not the most nimble guy, right? So that kind of goes against what the Commanders really like in a prospect. But if they like his technique, they like his IQ and potential. Maybe they roll the dice on that. Tough guy, more suited for a power attack. So again, like I said, not the most nimble player. But again, Tyler Booker is just an intriguing enough player that if he's sitting there at number 29, I just know, no matter what station you choose to watch for the NFL draft, people are going to be talking about him. And, if you see him come in and compete with a Nick Allegretti, something like that, I think that would be really, really intriguing. So there's a few names, 4 names specifically If the Commanders don't go biggest need, and look, I know some of you out there are probably saying offensive line isn't biggest need. Defensive line is a biggest need. If so, I'm sorry, but Cam's biggest needs were not offensive line, defensive line. So that's where we went for that question. Good question, Cam. Appreciate you. We're going to come back with another good question about the offensive line specifically, but it also gets into the depth of the rest of the Commanders roster. That coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that today thanks to our friends over at LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. And that is where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. So post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Continue now with today's episode of Locked On Commanders Mailbag Wednesday, picking it up with Richard, who asks, how good is our offensive line depth this year? As a matter of fact, our whole team depth. How does it look? And of course, this is just one man's opinion right here, talking to you on Locked On Commanders. But here's how I see it. Offensive line, I actually really like the depth here because I think, Andrew Wiley and either Andrew Wiley or Brandon Coleman are, a backup. Potentially both are going to be starters until Sam Cosmi comes back, and then one of them becomes a backup. So you like having that amount of experience, even Brandon Coleman in just one NFL season with all the starts and all the snaps and, going up against the Myles Garretts of the world and things like that, certainly going to learn a lot about himself. If they go through and let's say they draft a Josh Simmons or a Josh Conerly Jr. or any other tackle, then you have potentially two really experienced, really solid backups. Again, one of them likely to fill in for Sam Cosmi until he gets back, but then backup. Trent Scott is another really good depth player on this roster, filled in for Sam Cosmi. When Sam went down with his injury against the Detroit Lions, it was Trent Scott that came in and I think did a pretty good job. Speaking of Trent Scott, was recently on the Lake Lewis Jr. show. You can find that on YouTube. So if you want to hear that interview with Lake, go find that. I highly recommend it. And Nate Herbig, Nate Herbig is a guy that I really like. He's interior offensive lineman, was projected to be a starter with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, every day, as you probably remember hearing me say at some point in time, like if the opposing fan base is sad to see a guy go, and that's good news for your team. Well, with the Steelers, is a little bit of a mixed bag. Like Nate Herbig was supposed to, projected to be a starter at one point for the Steelers before he got hurt. And there were definitely a good amount of Steelers fans who were like, good, we never wanted this guy to be a long-time starter anyway, get him out of here. But then there were other people who were like, dude, this is a glue guy, high energy dude. You love having a guy like this on your group. Just from what I know of him, just from what I've seen of him, again, it's not a lot here, still sitting in April. But what I know, what I think about him coming into, OTAs and all that stuff, I really like, what he could potentially bring as depth to the offensive line. So I think Nate Herbig is going to be a really good addition. Looking at the receivers, last year's number 2, Noah Brown, is now the number 3. Not necessarily like, you're going to have 3 guys on the field a lot anyway, but like behind Terry McLaurin, behind Deebo Samuel, at least in reputation. So anytime you're pushing one of the guys from near the top of your depth chart down a little bit and he's not, pissed off about it, I think that's pretty good improvement to your receiver group. So I think you have to say that the depth there has been improved already, at least. Luke McCaffrey is obviously going to be a wait and see. We got to see how he comes back for his second year and where he takes a stride and where he takes a step and all that stuff. But I liked, the approach that Luke was taking. I know a lot of people had some expectations, one, to see him do a little bit more in his rookie year. I didn't have those expectations just because of his relative limited amount of experience as a receiver. And just the fact that when they talked about drafting him, it was, kind of understanding that he's going to be a project, right? Michael Gallup, the veteran former Cowboy receiver, is interesting. I'm kind of tentative to go all in on him being more than that right now, right? Like to me right now, he's just an interesting name. We'll see how he starts to perform in OTAs, training camp, stuff like that. And if there's reason to get excited, then I'll do so. Michael Gallup, look, last time I saw him play, I liked him a lot. When he was a free agent leaving Dallas, I was covering the Buccaneers. I thought the Buccaneers should have taken a run at him. He ends up signing with the Raiders and then ends up retiring. Now he's back. So, definitely there is talent there to be tapped into. The question is how much of it is still there. and how quickly is it going to come to the surface. Tight end position, I think the depth is great. I mean, Zach Ertz, John Bates, Ben Sinnott, Colson Yankoff, special teams contributor, Cole Turner. If you can ever learn how to block, that'd be great. But great receiver, great dude in the meantime. So I think you love the depth there. Quarterback room, Marcus Mariota is back. To me, that's like one of the biggest wins of this offseason that we're not really going to talk about a lot during the offseason. Sam Hartman is back, but also Josh Johnson, 38-year-old quarterback. To me, doesn't say anything about Sam Hartman. Like, I don't think this just means Sam Hartman, boom, is automatically practice squad again. I think it just means that if he's going to be the third quarterback, he's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to earn it against a guy that has played a lot of football for a lot of teams. He was with Washington. Josh Johnson was in 2018. Got his only career win wearing burgundy and gold. Started his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I actually remember when he was starting his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Running back, I think depth is great. The running back room, from a depth standpoint, is fantastic. It's the top level that you're maybe worried about, right? Again, I still think Brian Robinson Jr., I think that right leg injury ×3 had a little bit to do with it. I think the offensive line breaking down a little bit as the season went on had a little bit to do with it. So, I still think B-Rob is a very good starting running back in the NFL. We'll see if the Commanders make a move to bring another guy in or not. But either way, you have very good depth. If you need a new number one guy, go out and get him. Omari Hampton, Travion Henderson, something like that. But I think that they have a good running back room as is. Defensively, defensive tackle, similar to running back, a lot of good dudes, but is anybody great? That's the question. Is anybody going to be great? Is Johnny Newton going to be great? Is Javon Kinlaw going to be great with his third team? Is Deron Payne going to bring back that, contract year production? We'll have to see. Defensive end, I like Dorrance Armstrong Jr. I still think that he's under a little bit of pressure to put up more production versus more close to production this season. Not sure I really see the full vision with Cleveland Farrell and Dietrich Wise on the other side yet, but we'll see how that all kind of unfolds and what they do in the NFL draft as well. Behind him, I mean, guys like Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I really like him. I like Andre Jones Jr. a lot. I liked him better than KJ Henry, especially as a down lineman. I thought that there was a lot of potential there, so we'll see how those things kind of work out. Linebacker depth isn't great for linebackers. I think the potential in Jordan McGee is high. Nick Bellore is a special team stud, confirmed. Dominique Hampton, you know what I mean? We have a question about him coming up here in just a second as well. We'll see how year two goes for him. Jacob Martin is intriguing as a potential outside linebacker to try to replace Dante Fowler Jr. if they don't draft a guy. So that depends on what happens next week. But all in all, like, I can't tell you any of those guys is like, boom, future starter just waiting for their opportunity, right? Cornerback, Mikey Sanders still gives the Commanders options. They can move him inside and keep him outside. Lets them do what they need to do in the draft. Lattimore, Marshawn should look more like the Marshawn Lattimore you all thought you were getting in November. I like Jonathan Jones, the new free agent acquisition from the New England Patriots, but I'm not going to lock him into any starting position or anything. I think he's going to compete. Noah Igbenogany is back, which is a welcome surprise. I really thought the Commanders were going to go after a new slot corner or perimeter corner that was a little bit more of a secure, like this dude is a starter, and would have ultimately led to Igbenogany not returning. But I like the dude, so I'm glad he's back, even though he is good for a defense pass interference probably once every 2 weeks or so. Safety, I think you have solid starters with Quan Martin and Will Harris. Could see the team bringing in more traditional type strong safety next weekend. That's kind of what you're missing here. You don't really have like a Jeremy Chin type, right? Percy Butler is solid, but not great at anything. Rebo, special teams talent is unquestionable, leadership, all that stuff. Heart of the defense type of dude. Tyler Owens' upside is great. Health is his question. He and Jordan McGee kind of in the same boat. Like, you love the potential. You love what the future could bring for each of them. The question is, are they going to stay healthy enough to hit that potential? And Greg comes through and says, I'm curious what the plan is for Dominique Hampton, safety turn linebacker. I read/heard last offseason that he was instructed to get bigger and learn the linebacker position as if it was supposed to be basically a redshirt season for him. I believe he was already around 228 pounds when he was drafted as a hybrid safety, quote unquote. Where do they foresee him playing in his second season? Will he possibly start using more 3 linebacker sets now that teams are running the ball a little more as a whole in the NFL, try and take advantage of the ever-increasing amount of nickel and dime defensive sets? Yeah, I do. So multiple parts on here, right? Look, I do see a potential reality where Joey Jr. employs more 3 linebacker sets. So that's kind of question number one. Now, that could be like a safety hybrid, combo as a linebacker. It could be an outside linebacker with Frankie and whoever's on the opposite side with Bobby. It could be, 3 dudes in the middle of the field, to be quite honest with you. I do think you're going to see a little bit more diversity out of the defense this year. For Dominique Hampton, He's already kind of got the safety thing. I don't want to say down, but like he's got the experience there. Last year was really about just getting him as much experience, as many reps as a linebacker as possible. I really think that the ultimate path for him is kind of be that Jeremy Chin type, right? Like he can play that strong safety, cover a tight end, cover a slower running back out of the backfield, but also he can crash the box, play big in the box, things like that. I don't know what Dominique Hampton weighs right now, but I can tell you that during the course of the season, he did appear to get bigger. To me, he and I had a lot of conversations, some about football, some not about football. So, I'll keep those between me and him. But Dominique is someone that I talked to often during the season last year. And I think that he was really embracing kind of the process of learning and just getting better. So I can't tell you, boom, this is exactly what's going to happen with Dominique Hampton, but you're pretty much spot on what kind of the plan and pathway is. It's just a matter of where does he fit, what clicks, what doesn't click, and how do they move on from there. Speaking of the NFL draft coming up next week, we've got a question coming up about rookie contracts, getting in the weeds a little bit about how these soon-to-be new NFL players are going to get paid. That next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks in part to our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bets, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. So if you sign up for FanDuel and bet $5 on the Golden State Warriors to win their play-in tournament game, exciting finish to that game, then you're going to be happy because you won that bet and you won $250 in bonus bets. But if you haven't signed up yet, there's still time, and you can put your money on the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are plus 175 favorites to win the NBA Finals. You can put it on the Boston Celtics, who are plus 190 second favorites. You could even put it on plus 175 odds for the Celtics and the Thunder to be the two teams that face off in the NBA Finals, and so many other bets that you can go out there and make. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. We're a Mailbag Wednesday episode, and Keith came through. Is there an equation for establishing ranges on draftees' contracts by draft spot, position, or is it just bargained as team sign players? So there is an NFL rookie wage scale. What the wage scale does is it sets the total money for a rookie contract at every draft pick spot, right? So 1 through, 265 or whatever it is. Every pick has its total money set. That is set. It's set by number, not by position. All contracts are 4 years, with first rounders coming in with a 5th-year team option. There's some negotiables in those deals because you do hear every once in a while, I think like Joey Bosa, when he was drafted, there was a little bit of a holdout there with him. There are some things that are negotiable, not a lot of things. The first-year base salary essentially dictates everything because the base salary has a minimum and it has a maximum, right? It has to be between those numbers. But then the next year's salaries and cap hits and all that stuff can only increase by a certain percentage. I don't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it's set in stone, kind of like you can only increase, by X amount of percentage, things like that. So that first year really kind of sets the tone for everything. The 5th-year option rules changed in 2020. And now if a team exercises the 5th-year option on a player, it's fully guaranteed as of the day it gets picked up, even against injury, as is the 4th year of the rookie contract if it wasn't already guaranteed. 5th-year options have to be accepted or declined anytime from the end of the first-round pick's 3rd season to prior to one of the first few days in May. This year, the deadline is May 1st. The first-round pick for Washington, who had his option decision due this year, is wide receiver Jahan Dotson, who clearly is not with the team anymore, and his option has reportedly already been declined by the Philadelphia Eagles, meaning that he'll either have to re-sign a new contract with the Philadelphia Eagles, at any point right now, or at the end of the season, or he will become an unrestricted free agent in the 2026 offseason when the new league year begins in March. So a lot of rookie contract details there. Another one from Cam to wrap up today's episode. What is the likelihood Adam Peters makes a draft trade with Philadelphia Eagles GM Howie Roseman again? And follow-up question would be, how do we make it even less likely? Yeah. I know people really do not enjoy when a team trades in the division. And, seeing the Philadelphia Eagles trade up with the Commanders last year to get Cooper DeJean, and then seeing Cooper DeJean get a pick 6 in the Super Bowl probably makes it a little bit harder, right? But look, Adam Peters got a good player out of that too, right? They wanted Johnny Newton, they wanted Mikey Sanders, so they wanted Ben Sinnott. They got all three guys. They're happy with the guys that they got. Obviously, they didn't want Cooper DeJean, or at least not one. They didn't want him enough, right? Because he was on the board. They could have just taken him, but they decided to trade out. So, I get it. I totally get it. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, Adam Peters has traded with Howie Roseman twice. He's traded a draft pick with him, and he traded a player. And he traded a first-round pick, not his first-round pick, but a first-round pick, Jahan Dotson. There's nothing you can say to stop Adam Peters from trading with Howie Roseman. If he wants to trade with Howie Roseman, he's going to trade with Howie Roseman, because I'll tell you right now, you're not going to hear like outlandish, reactions from me on this show, but you did hear them on the radio. You saw them on social media from fans. Those types of things happened, and he knew they were going to come when he made the trade. You know what I mean? And he knew they were going to come when he made the trade for Jahan to go to Philly as well. And if he makes another trade with the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Giants, he's going to know that they're going to come again. The only thing I could say is, like, court of public opinion, yell loud enough and maybe AP will back down. But I don't think AP is going to back down from anybody. But good question, Cam. Look, if it happens, man, I flinch for you guys every time it happens. But these GMs, they're worried about other things more so than they're worried necessarily about divisional rivalries and all that. It doesn't mean that it never comes up or that you wouldn't prefer to trade outside the division, right? But at the end of the day, if you see a deal that can help your team, you're going to make that deal no matter what happens on the other side of it. So good questions in the mailbag. We've got some left over. We will do another mailbag episode before the NFL draft. That's coming up next week. So if you want to get in on that, make sure you sign up to be a Locked On Commanders insider. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders is where to go to get into that action. We are going to have some prospect game study film studies coming out to insiders also starting soon. So if you want to get on that, again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to become an insider. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez as they continue to help all of us get ready for next weekend's NFL draft. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Everydayers, thanks for coming through every day. Everybody out there, until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, so we can see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.